Hey everybody, hello to my academic decathlon team. I'm gonna try. I know I gave you guys like section two of the arts, but this stuff gets a while. It takes a while to go over. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to try to finish this up really quickly. I might go too fast, but essentially I'm trying to go through art history in a really short time span. So let's go through this really quickly and see how much y'all understand. So moving on. Um, we last talked about post-impressionism. Moving on is next is called modernism. Modernism was, I guess you could say it's around now, but there are different types of modernists and different types of art. The first one's called fauvism. Okay, the best way to describe it is wild beasts, and essentially Henri Matisse. I don't know if you heard of Matisse before, but he tried to emphasize the scope of color. So a lot of people, or they have freely applied intense arbitrary color. So that's why they got this term, or a stereotypical term called the wild beasts, because they're crazy about color. Next was Cubism. The most famous Cubism artist is Picasso, which some of you know. It attacked the traditional form. It played around like what is real perspective. And it was actually influenced a lot by African art. Pablo Picasso, he was the one that exemplifies Cubism, and he went to Paris actually to figure out this stuff. Cubism reflects a lot of psychology, which explains that human experience, it's like a lot of multiple mental images and multiple perspectives. So that's what they're trying to do in Cubism. Expressionism, again, I'm going to mess up these names, but these are German names. Die Bruch. That group, they attempted to illustrate the inner mind. They used Fauvist colors, and then they used Edvard Munch's emotions. Okay, so they're trying to combine the two, called expressionism. So De Bruch and Der Blau Reiter are the ones that did expressionism. That's expressionism. Here's the Dada Blau Reiter group. They did completely abstract paintings. So those are the difference between the two expressionists. And Distill, which I don't know if that's their name, but this modernist, it was Dutch abstract art, and the movement promoting flat fields and just primary color. So this one right here is Fauvism. This is what they call wild beast artists. This one on the bottom left, this is the De Bruch. This one right here, De Bruch. So this one's the one combining the colors and emotions. Okay. This one right here is Picasso. This is Cubism. Okay. On the bottom right, this is Distill. So this is a flat field, primary color, yellow, red, black. Okay. So hopefully you know these types of modernism. Okay. More modernism. One's called Dada. Dada, it's an iconoclastic art movement rebelling against status quo and World War I. So this one on the top, this is called Fountain. This is Dada. It's called Fountain by Marcel Duchamp, and it helped New York City replace Paris as the center of the art world. Okay, so that's Dada, and another type of Dada, Marcel Duchamp. He painted a mustached Mona Lisa, and that was considered Dada. I guess as like a rebellious art movement. Harlem Renaissance. Some of you heard of the Harlem Renaissance when I taught y'all last year, but we talked about these African arts sort of reblossoming in Harlem. So we talked about different types of famous black artists, but it was a revival of the African American culture. Surrealism, Sigmund Freud, he inspired artists to paint the inner mind. So that's why we had artists like Salvador Dali paint the inner mind. And then Bauhaus architecture, we're talking about streamlined furniture and buildings, and it was closed by a Nazi government. Before the World Wars, the Bauhaus school, it sort of standardized architecture and design. It was Bauhaus was like a standard like name, like IKEA almost. But after the school closed, they all moved to the United States and started teaching, or continued to teach, this Bauhaus architecture. So this right here, again, is Dada. It's called Fountain. It's a picture of a fountain. It was rebelling against status quo. And then this one right here is a representative of Surrealism. So it's supposed to be a picture of the inner mind. Moving on, we have abstraction, pop art, minimalism, and photorealism. I know that this is a ton of art history, and I'm doing it really quickly, but abstract expressionism we're talking about action painting, so dramatic, forceful, like attacking the canvas. We have color field painting, which is like large fields of color, geometric form. So this one here on the top left, this right here is what they call action painting. Okay, so like you thrust and like have a whole bunch of action to make your painting. This right here is called color field. So large fields, geometric form, that's what that is. Okay. Pop art, that's when we had like mass culture, pop culture sort of entering art. Andy Warhol was the symbol of it, so I don't know if you've seen Andy Warhol's painting of like the Campbell soup can, stuff like that, so that's what he was known for. Okay. Minimalism, we're talking about simple forms, monochromatic color ranges, hard edge painting, so this one right here in the middle, this is considered minimalism, or hard-edged. And the last one, photorealism, we're imitating photos through crisp focus. Advanced realism resembles Gustave Courbet's style, and this right here is a photorealistic sculpture. It's called Tourists 2, and that's called photorealism. We're just going more and more and more. Earthworks, large outdoor works, and they alter the landscape. So, you know, like tiered, they had these like rice terraces in the Philippines. So we're talking about large. Some of you may remember the movie. Gosh, what was that movie called? It had Mel Gibson in it, but they had those crop fields and they sort of mowed. Oh, signs. They did signs and thing, and that's called earthworks. Okay, popularized by Christo and Jean-Claude. Performance art, Guerrilla Girls, New York City performance group drawing attention to gender and the racial disparities in the world. And then postmodernism, we're introducing sort of decorative elements to architecture. So those are the three. This one up at the top, this is called Christo's Surrounded Island. So they made an island and they did sort of artwork around it. And this is the Sony Building by Philip Johnson, and this is what they consider postmodernism when they put decorative stuff into architecture. Okay. So that was all the different styles of art, and it was a lot. I know some of you always keep mentioning how you remember all that, so I'm just see what sticks. Now we're going to talk about different cultures. This one's called Asian art. The Chinese, they're more for pottery, and the Great Wall is what they're mostly known for. Some of you may remember the Emperor of Qin. He was buried with his clay army and horses. We have the Tang Dynasty, which was the Golden Age. So we now have ceramic sculptures, ink drawings. And then the Communist Revolution in China shifted the art to sort of more propaganda. So that's the shift in the history of Chinese art. Indian art, India, as you know, or some of you may know, that it has a lot of diversity. So we have a lot of different, I guess you could say, different elements from different arts. So first of all, the religion is Buddhism. So that's where most of their art is influenced. But they also have some Greek sculpture, and they also apply some Hinduism art, Hindu art. So that's Indian. And the last one, Japanese art. Buddhism spread from China to Japan, and it sort of molded these Japanese art. And they're most famous for these wood prints, and they influenced the 19th century painters. And this right here in the top right is a Japanese print. African and Oceanic art. So African, we're talking about cave paintings. The Nok, it's a civilization. They created like these terracotta sculptures of leaders. And then the Benin Kingdom, they also started to do like bronze portrait heads. So for example, here on the top right, this is a terracotta sculpture. And here in the middle, we have a Benin, or I don't know how to pronounce it. Here, this is a bronze portrait head. So this is African art. Oceanic art, so those are talking about the islands. So like Polynesian, they had body art, tattoos. So if you know, like the Polynesian or Samoans have all this, tattoos, that have tattoos, and it defines social status. The Melanesian Asmats, they adorned large wooden shields, and they had like red, black, and white designs. This right here is an Asmat wooden shield. And then the Melanesians also carved masks for ceremonies, and that was to honor their dead ancestors. Islam, so we did Asia, Oceania, Islam. Islamic art, we have the Muslim religion emerged in the Arabian Peninsula as a result of the teachings of Muhammad. So most of their art is based on the teachings of Muhammad. The Quran, some of you may have heard the Holy Book of Quran, it bans figurative art. So artists create calligraphy or abstract decorations. And then the Dome of the Rock declares the Islamic presence in Jerusalem. So the Dome of the Rock, that's that's a form of art. Art of the Americas, so North, Central, and South. Most of the arts from the Americas are crafts. Southern American cities, they had like Great Pyramids. Today we have textiles, jewelry, sculpture, Mayan ruins. That's what we have. In the Northwest, the Indians they carved boxes and house boards. And in the Southwest, sort of our area, we talk about pueblos and the complexes that they're in. So here's the Dome of the Rock. This is called the Pyramid of the Sun. So we're talking about South American art. And then this is a Northwest Coast Indian house pole of carved wood. So some of you may have been to Seattle or Canada where they have these like totem poles, and that's their artwork that they're known for. Okay. Last part of section 1 is all the basic elements of art. So pardon me if I run through this really quick. Okay. So some of you already know this. Line, you already know that a line is a basic element of art, right? That's a line. An implied line is a line that's sort of like interrupted, or it's like an edge, or like a line of footprints. Like there's no line there, but you could imagine there's a line. That's called an implied line. A shape is when you have a two-dimensional object, so like a square. And form is when you have 3 dimensions. Okay. Geometric means shapes or forms from mathematics, or you could have an organic form, which is from nature. Space, we could talk about positive space. There's a difference between positive and negative space. Positive space is the objects in an artwork. So if you take a picture of something, that's the main foreground is considered positive space. And negative space is called the space around an object, also called the ground. So the ground or negative space, that's the stuff around the objects in an artwork. Perspective, some of you know what linear perspective is. It's like parallel lines. They could appear to converge. So if you have like a road and it looks like it ends at the middle of the picture, that's called linear perspective. And the artist creates like a vanishing point on the horizon where all the vertical lines converge. But another type of perspective that people don't know about is like aerial perspective, where objects further away are like they're drawn lighter, but the ones that are and less detailed, and the ones in the foreground, they're more, they're darker, they're richer, and they have more detail. So it's like, have you ever taken pictures and the background sort of blurry? That's called aerial perspective. So they can create illusion of depth with overlapping, size, placements. That's how you can get perspective. Okay, got about 3 minutes left. Color and texture, sorry, going back. The hue, some of you may have heard of all these terms before. Hue is the name of a color on the color wheel, so that's called hue. Neutrals, black, whites, grays, those are called neutrals. Value is the lightness or darkness of a hue. So like maybe if you have like red, the value, if you'll have a lot of red or very little red, that's what you call the value. Intensity is the brightness or purity of a color. Local color is the color of an object, in its natural light, what the color of the object is. And then the optical color is the color of an object in different lighting. So if I had a picture of me and I was, in general light, I'm sort of brown. But if I was at dusk or at sunset or sunrise, then my optical color changes. And then arbitrary color is like a color picked by the artist, like just for emotion or aesthetic, but has nothing to do with much. Texture, there's something called actual and visual texture. Actual texture is like a 3-dimensional texture. And visual is the illusion of a texture on a 2-dimensional surface. So I don't know if you guys have ever drawn like a cube on a piece of paper. It's not 3 dimensions, but it's implied 3 dimensions. That's called visual texture. Composition. There's rhythm, balance, contrast, proportion, and scale. Rhythm means like the repetition of a line or a shape. And a motif is a single element. So our logo, the fleur-de-lis for the saints. If I draw just one of it, that's what I consider the motif. But if I make a wallpaper of a whole bunch of fleur-de-lises, that's called a pattern. Okay. Balance, there's different types of balance in art. There's symmetry. So if it's even on left and right or up and down or inside, that's called symmetrical. Approximate symmetry says there's slight variations but almost symmetrical. And then there's asymmetrical balance, where dissimilar objects are arranged to create balance. Okay. Contrast, another thing to consider is called a focal point. A focal point is where the viewer's eyes tend to rest. Proportion, it's the relative sizes of an object. So remember, in the distance, something like a person would be really big, but far away that person would be very small. It's called proportion. And scale is the relation between the element size and the size of the work. So if I paint, if I paint an iPhone, the scale means like how big is that iPhone on my canvas compared to how big an actual iPhone is. So that's considered scale.